So we have some really wonderful homeschooling parents here that have been doing it all different amounts of time, coming together to share information and answer questions of families that are new or considering homeschooling. I don't believe that Crystal has made it with us yet. So Heather, if you want to introduce yourself, we'll start with you. Some really wonderful homeschooling parents here that have been doing it all different amounts of time.
I feel like I've got an echo here, but my name's Heather Deedham-Luttrell. I'm the Director of Operations at Homeschool Concierge, and I have homeschooled off and on my own kids. And so I'm really excited to be here. I think the homeschool community is truly amazing, and it's full of really, really wonderful supporting parents, which you don't typically get in traditional schooling. It's just wonderful. So I am here. This is me.
Heather, when you're done, will you go on to the next person? I'm trying to figure out why my computer's doing that. I've never had it do that before. So I'm going to go mute for a minute.
All right, awesome. So again, this is Heather. And if we have Maria Flores or Mariah Gage to introduce yourselves.
I'm Mariah Gage. I'm a mom of 7 kids. We've just completed our 6th year of homeschooling. We've came over from the public school setting, and it's been an amazing adventure for our family. We're really excited about it. We've started a convention here locally to be able to bring speakers and resources to the Central Valley of California. And yeah, I'm just excited to share what knowledge I can.
Wonderful. And now we've got Nancy Major with us as well. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Of course. I'm Nancy Major, and I'm a retired, quote unquote, homeschool mom of 3 twice exceptional boys. We homeschooled all the way through until they went to college. I also am a credentialed teacher, and I started life as a bilingual teacher, and later then have worked in, I think, 6 different charter schools and started a couple of district homeschool programs. So I've seen it all. And I love the homeschooling community for the support that we give one another and the encouragement. And I'm here to encourage you because I didn't intend to homeschool in the first place. And now it's our way of life.
Wonderful. And let's see, what about Meg Navarro? Are you available to chat about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so first I just wanted to ask parents, like, do your kids love learning? Because I didn't start off loving learning. So just a little background about me is that I was actually homeschooled. So I went to public and private school in the 1st and 2nd grade, and I just cried all the time. I hated school. And then my mom quit her engineering job when I was in 3rd grade and started homeschooling me. And it was just a huge transformation because even to this day, like, I love learning now. So the big transformation for me was that one day I just remember in 3rd grade asking my mom, when are we going to start school? And she said, oh, well, remember when I read to you that story? That was history. And remember when we went out to the garden and to the yard and labeled all the plants and drew everything? That was science. And so I really fell in love with learning. And of course, there were certain things that she couldn't disguise that were really more obviously school for me, like math. But she always gave me a why for why we were doing things. And I just feel like seeing how it applied to everyday life just helped me to really develop an ownership for my learning. Also, she let me choose which kinds of classes whenever possible that I could take. So there were a lot of different options from vendors like lessons and things like that. And I chose to focus on art. Well, with art, I sometimes thought I was a really great artist. And then other times I would have these times of frustration where I would just crumple up my picture and think, oh, I'm never going to be good enough. But my real big transformation happened when in high school as a senior, I was able to actually get a lot of my requirements out of the way early, because when you homeschool, some of you may have experienced this as well, there's not as much busy work, and so things can be more efficient. And so I had all this extra time. And so I was able to do an internship, and I I took a bunch of art classes and I taught art at a school in Oregon, an art school. And it was just a really big transformation for me because that was where I really developed my identity. Like, okay, I'm an artist, I'm creative. And so when I graduated from homeschool in 2007, I started my own business, Megapixel School of the Arts. And I am a vendor, so I teach online art, creative writing, and photography classes to kids of all ages. And I just know that that never would have happened if I hadn't homeschooled, because homeschooling really allowed me to pursue my passions and to chase after my dreams. And so it just was such a great experience for me. So I really love helping homeschoolers to have similar experiences through the arts and to develop their creativity and things like that. And I'm going to be talking in a later session about this, but kids are actually born with genius levels of creativity. And by the time they reach adulthood, almost all of them lose that. So my mission is to help kids not only feel confident in their ability to create, but also just to get that creativity back or keep that creativity. So yeah, that is my homeschooling story. I'm just really thankful to my mom for homeschooling me because it really changed my life.
Wonderful. And let's have Christine Rainier, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Rainier. Good to see you all here today. I have been homeschooling for 7 years. My daughter is 11. She's going into 7th grade. She was originally in the public school system. She was on an IEP for some speech issues, and so she went into school early. We found that there was a whole lot of problems there, and I had been lied to by the IEP team, and there was, we couldn't find a good fit for her with multiple different things going on, and so I ended up pulling her out. And when I talk to people about homeschooling and the newer homeschoolers, I think about how it felt when I first left the traditional style of schooling, and I felt it was so overwhelming. And I hear that when I'm talking to people and giving them lots of information, they're so overwhelmed by all the options, and it's like being completely rebellious from what you thought the lifestyle was going to look like, or maybe what you've received for education in your life. So it seems very counterculture, or very, it's kind of like so much freedom that it's scary. But that's what it turns into, is slowly, instead of being overwhelming, it turns into something that feels like just beautiful freedom. And you have your own ways of doing things, and you slowly grow into that, and you slowly learn how to have that lifestyle and tailor things as you go for your kids as they're developing. And it's okay to try things out. It's okay to to de-school in the beginning and not have everything all together. And most moms will tell you that you tend to start out with a little bit more of a rigid plan, but then you ease up and you slowly unfold into this more beautiful process of just natural learning. And there are some people who still stick with the books and the packaged curriculum, but I think even those people tend to become more flexible over time and more watchful for what their children's passions and needs are, and become just kind of a life teacher throughout life, instead of having to sit down at a specific time and be at a table and have your workbooks and textbooks. And while some people do that, it might only take a couple of hours a day to do that more schooly style, and then the rest of the time is for classes and park days and museums and field trips and all the other beautiful things that life contains. So I just want to share that up front first, because I think that's the first couple questions people have, and they're really afraid that if they don't do it right, then their child's ruined. And none of that's true. And you're perfectly capable of teaching your child. You taught them from, you took care of them and kept them alive since infancy and before they ever went to public school. And you are, you don't have to have high degrees or whatever in order to teach your kids. That's a myth. You just have to be invested and care and put your effort into finding resources for them and coaching them along the way of how to be a good person and all the things that you do as a parent naturally. It'll all just come out of you naturally. And if you get stuck anywhere, there's this wonderful community of people that you can go on Facebook or at your park days or wherever and connect with all these other homeschoolers that maybe have different ways of doing things, and you can get ideas. It's extremely helpful and supportive. I never felt I had a community until I entered the homeschool world, and I thought I was going to be alone, and I was scared, and I was, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? I'm on my own. And I actually entered this beautiful community of supportive people, and so many people have different views and different philosophies, but we're able to come together cohesively and support each other, and for the most part not have people putting down your ways or your views. It's very inclusive, and that's very beautiful, and it's really great as a model for your kids. So more about myself. I know I'm getting off topic. So my background is in behavior therapy and educational therapy and marriage and family therapy. So I try to combine those things. I'm a vendor with some of the charter schools through Homeschool Concierge to provide field trips and classes and parent workshops or whatever people are wanting. And I also have my own side business called Imagine Achievement, where I do more learning success coaching. So more one-on-one, more teaching the family how to either start up a homeschool program for themselves or handle educational issues like ADHD or sensory integration issues or speech delays or anxiety, autism, you name it, anything that's a atypical learning giftedness, right? Any of those things, I love to help people, and I'm able to bring multiple different dimensions or multiple different fields together to kind of see the whole child and give you tools and techniques to be able to teach them yourself, right? So I can do tutoring, but for the most part, what I do is I just learn your child and your family and yourself, and I teach you how to do that with your child so that you can homeschool. It also works very well for people who don't want to maybe get a label and go the standard way through an IEP or things like that. Or maybe they want some services that are different than what an IEP program will offer them, right? A little bit more hand-holding, a little bit more specific techniques that maybe IEPs are not offering. So those are things I love to give. I want to help people, and that's what I'm out here doing. I'm also part of the California Homeschool Parents Association that just got up and running this last fall. We're still getting up and running. It's a process of getting together a 501c nonprofit. And it's been a little bit of a struggle, but we're looking for more volunteers. We're looking for parent involvement so that you can get whatever it is in your location. You can cohesively join together with other people who either want advocacy for, for like political advocacy, or you want more classes at the libraries, or you want more arts classes, or you want to see more people exchanging childcare, right? Whatever it is locally that your needs are as homeschoolers, we can join together and support each other in getting those needs met. We just need to hear from you, and we need to have people stand up and say, yes, I'm passionate about this thing. I want to do this thing. How do I connect with other people and get support to take it off the ground? So that's what our goals are there. So we love volunteers. We love people to be more outspoken in that and come join us. You can go to the Facebook page. It's CHPA or California Homeschool Parents Association. There's also a website. I'm going to also start.
Sorry to interrupt. We'll put
That's
together.
okay.
We'll put together the list of resources for them after, so you don't have to get sites. We're gonna want to move on and let Shauna introduce herself too. So this is the introduction, and then we have slides that we're gonna go through our topics of today. Just FYI, okay? So we're
awesome.
On some of the answers to your questions that we're seeing on Facebook. Go ahead, finish up, please. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm good. Go ahead, Shauna.
Okay. Hi, I'm Shauna Reiswitz. I have been a teacher my entire adult life. That's kind of what I trained for when I was, right out of college. And I taught in public school, in private school, internationally. And then in 2002, I was looking around. I did a graduate program, and then I started looking around, what do I do? And I kind of accidentally fell into this beautiful homeschool program. And I learned, and I basically learned about homeschooling started on this journey in 2002. I didn't have children yet, and I knew that I was going to want children. And I noticed that the kids in this homeschooling program were so happy. That was one of the first things I noticed, because I'd worked with other children or other teens, especially in other programs. There was great kids there for sure, but there was a big range from really happy, wonderful kids to really unhappy kids. And there was kind of a big range. But when I got into this homeschool program, it's like every child was just happy and joyful and had this certain freedom about them. And they were really great at talking to adults. And I just was really impressed by it. And it felt very villagey to me, which was something that I was valuing and still do. And so I fell into this program. I had my babies in this program. I think some of the people on my feed are from that, and it was a small village. It was a district district program. So you're going to learn about different programs. So I worked in the district homeschool program. Kind of had to leave that at some point as my husband got work somewhere else, and I started in on homeschooling as a homeschool teacher in the charter schools, which you'll also learn about. And I also, in that time, have created my own private school where I help kids graduate, get transcripts and graduate from high school and do some teen mentoring. And I'm going to open that up to a K-8 program as well. So it'll be K-12 private school satellite program. So I've worked with all different kinds of people in education and all different kinds of people and all different kinds of homeschoolers. And other people who are on my Facebook page or coming here kind of know I'm sort of revolutionary, but professionally, I feel like I'm in the education revolution. And I'm excited to help people find this really free and exciting way to educate their children.
Wonderful. And our last presenter or panelist is Denise. Denise, can you please introduce yourself? And just to address, we do have a couple of questions in the chat box from Zoom chats and also from Facebook. Several are coming in about PSAs. We will definitely answer those questions. And I thank you so much for putting those into the chat box for us.
Okay. So I have 4 children, ages 35 to 15. And I've been homeschooling for probably 25 years at various times in their lives for various reasons. 2 of my children are special ed students. My youngest is on the autism spectrum. And again, when I said I did it for various reasons, I have one that did public school and he was fine. I schooled one because she has some special interest that she wanted to pursue. I have been working in the charter school industry with Inspire for 6.5 years. I'm a vendor development administrator. I'm definitely, I have grown bias towards homeschooling. I know that everybody has different learning styles and there are so many different scenarios. Public school was fine for my son. But I have grandchildren now and I just see the beauty and the value and the world that could be at their fingertips by homeschooling. So I am encouraging my daughters and daughter-in-laws to do it if they want to. But I love the world. I love the people. I love my job. I love working with the vendors. The vendors are a beautiful group of people because so many of them have created businesses and then given us opportunities to bring our kids and have them experience so many fun things. And I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Well, we're happy to have you, Denise. Thanks. Thank you to all of our panelists for introducing yourselves. I think the only one that we didn't get to was Maria Flores. Has she joined us yet?
Let me check, and I hope that my sound is fixed. I don't know.
Yes, it is, Wendy. And we have so many amazing questions coming in. Again, I just want to let you guys know that we are very eager to answer those questions. Keep them coming in, and we're keeping track of them, and we'll definitely get to those.
Okay, I didn't quite get to introduce myself. I'm Wendy Eklund. I've been homeschooling, I want to say, for over 11 years. I won't get into all of it because we're going to talk about different things and philosophies and kind of our own stories once we get to our slides. So we wanted to briefly talk as homeschooling parents. What does education look like? I know that when I first started as a homeschool mom, I thought education looked like what a classroom looks like. And so I tried to set my child down at that table and make him do the schoolwork that the district was providing. We first joined an independent study program through a district. And so they did fill my car up with all the books that the district uses. And as not being a teacher, I didn't know how to use all those books in the teacher's guide. So we slowly followed a path to be unschoolers where I follow my child's interests and we create projects and lessons around the things that they're interested in. So let's talk a little bit about everyone else's journey and what education looked like to them. Nancy?
About a million years ago, maybe in the 70s, I read a book called Better Than School. And if you ever find that ancient thing, it predates homeschooling as a thing in this country and talked about this most delightful family experience where child-led learning and home life was central. And I just saw that as my future. And that, despite my 100% public education with a dad who was a superintendent of schools, that was my vision of what life should look like in my house, where we just all learned together in this beautiful way. And so when my oldest child was, I had started an independent study program for my local school district, and my oldest, who is extremely twice exceptional, meaning severe on both ends of that description, had a lovely time in kindergarten, and the first grade teachers just came right out and told me they didn't want him. And that I was the homeschool teacher and I should just teach him at home because really, no, he wasn't a person for them. And my feelings were not hurt. They were just disgusted with that attitude. And we came home and we just became the family in Better Than School. And it was amazing. And I discovered that what home education looked like was whatever we wanted to make it look like. And I was very much, as a teacher, informed by things like state standards at that time, but not really. We did what we needed to do. It was focused on my child and his weird development that was asynchronous in every single way. And so I couldn't come at it like a school. Best blessing of my life, I couldn't come at it like a school. I had to do it myself. Now, my biggest recommendation for new homeschoolers is I started when there was no curriculum materials, much less vendors. It was a do-it-yourself operation. And when you look hard at your own children, you'll know what school looks like for you.
Did anyone else want to share their experience of how their idea of education shifted when they started homeschooling?
I can. Or Denise, if you'd like to go first.
Okay. My youngest boy is 15 and probably had the most, I don't want to say severe, but the most pressing needs that were not being met in public school. And so I, like Wendy, tried their independent study program. I ultimately ended up going to a charter school. And when I pulled out of the public school, they called social services and the district attorney's office to suggest that I was doing something wrong. And my faith in them being on my team with my son was lost. And so I very quickly learned what being a SPED parent was, very quickly learned what my rights and responsibilities were, and just took it as my responsibility to find, whether it be my own PSP or a charter school, I found that the responsibility that I had towards my son invigorated me. And that's how I met Wendy, and how I learned that there's not one way. There's hundreds of ways. You have to first look at your student. What way do they need? And it's been amazing and wonderful, and gives me hope for students that do have a struggling time in school.
Anyone else?
So I'll try not to be long-winded about that. About my own personal background, because I think as parents and people, our personal background comes into play on how you see the world and how you see learning and education. And so that's definitely true for me. But I will say, I'll keep it to the point and say that I started my daughter out first, and she was very young at the time, so I had some flexibility. She was already reading, so I didn't have any of those major concerns that I feel some homeschoolers have when they enter at an earlier age about, oh, will they ever learn to read and all that. I didn't have those issues because she was already reading it too. She was very atypical. So what happened for us was I wanted some sort of state standard background curriculum that I could depend on, because I didn't want to make any holes or gaps while I was learning what to do. I was really concerned about that because her dad was concerned about that. And so we wanted to make sure we were hitting all those state standards. So I went for Time for Learning online as a background program. But then I went ahead and pulled from multiple different resources, like workbooks, like BrainQuest has workbooks that has multiple different subjects in one workbook. I would just pull from those, and then everything else was life learning and things that I wanted to teach her. And we already had a lot of embedded life learning going on in our lives, so I felt comfortable with all of that, but I wanted to make sure that there was some sort of backbone. And we stuck pretty religiously to doing some of those worksheets, all the subjects, not every single day, but all the subjects. And then it became more and more where we did less of the structured stuff and more of the museums and field trips and out in life, going to Asian markets, learning about different foods, learning how to calculate percentages and discounts and things like that naturally in real life at the grocery store, stuff like that. So I would look for learning opportunities or festivals in the area or different ways that we can learn throughout life and in more of an experiential way, or more of a project-based or unit study way, versus let's look at a specific subject and have to do a worksheet on this thing. So it moved a lot more creatively. I think it was pretty creative to begin with, but I'm less and less over time concerned about the state standards and any sort of like consistent structure. I would say I'm half or maybe more than half unschool, but I still have days where we sit down and we do schooly things too on purpose. So I consider myself eclectic.
Wendy, I would love, if it's okay, to just take a minute on this. So I, like you, I started with a charter school through a district on an independent study basis type of program. And I came in with, at the time, 5 kids, and I was overwhelmed and stressed out and, oh my gosh, why am I even doing this? Because I did not plan on homeschooling. I think somebody else has said that it was not my mission. I had not looked into it at all. It fell into my lap, and it was, I get like emotional because it was hard. Like, this is hard. And I want everyone, who's starting this in the beginning, it's not easy, and you will get overwhelmed, but just remember that these are your children, and you will watch them and you will figure it out together. And you don't need that structure and that textbook, because it's not going to be the way you're going to teach your child. It's not meant that way. And so I think I had an emotional breakdown, and my teacher that was over us, she was like, look, just stop. I want you to go get a book from your cupboard and take that book. And I want every single one of your children, you read it to all of them. And I want them to each take a part of it. So we had, middle schoolers down to kindergartners, and we read The Gingerbread Man. And then we read all of the series of The Gingerbread Man. And they were able to, we did science experiments, and then the older kids got to rewrite their ending to the story and, just really dive into it. And it was amazing to me. It opened my eyes to see, wow, this is homeschooling. There's less stress in our home. My kids are happy. They enjoy learning. So we, like Meg said, we developed that love for learning. And my children, and they just eat it up. They love the hands-on. We do field trips. We went on a cruise and went to the Maya ruins, and they were just so they embraced what they can, it's amazing. And so that's just, you will be overwhelmed and you will be scared, any new parent out there, but you can do it. Your child, your child. It's an amazing, amazing adventure.
I think you definitely touched on it, Mariah. Learning becomes a family activity. Nancy, you said the same thing. Everything becomes a learning experience, and you start to realize, hey, I've been educating my child since the moment they were born, but our society kind of leads us down this path that once our child is 6 years old, we have to put them in kindergarten and we're no longer able to educate them. But we are able to. So don't be afraid that you can't do this. You'll have many moments where you think that you can't, but that you find a community to support you, moms like us that have been doing it a long time, that can help build you up.
I have something just to tag on it. It came across my mind that I need to say is, one of the things that I was really attracted to in meeting homeschoolers and young schoolers is watching teens who've been homeschooled their whole lives start community college. And I found it really interesting and fascinating how well they did. Like, they had here no years of formal education, and yet they're 16, 17, they just went right into community college. There might have been a little learning curve in there of how to figure out classes, but they, in general, do really, really well. And the other kind of comment I would hear from them is, what's wrong with the other kids in the class? They don't even want to learn. Like, I don't understand. They look around and see the other kids in the community college classes and feel like, why don't they want to learn about women in history? Like, this is totally fascinating. I love it. Right. So it's kind of, it's just interesting to have watched kids go, from like kind of not reading at 12 sometimes to jumping into community college, and it's and kind of retaining that passion and interest in learning.
Yeah, I've heard that same thing, and heard college professors say how much they love having children that are homeschooled in their classes because they are more engaged in the learning and the discussion. So I
have a friend who teaches at our local community college, and she said it's kind of one of the things they get together and compare notes on, like, oh, how many homeschool kids do you have? Oh, how many? And they love them. They think they're great. So that was really an early reason to try to homeschool my kids. But as the world would have it, now they've decided to go to regular high school. So
now
you don't always get what you want.
Yeah, exactly. No, I know. So now we're going to talk about the ways, like the options you have here in California for homeschooling. We know that a lot of parents are now suddenly having to consider homeschool as their education route because of the situation in our schools with COVID-19. So we just want to make sure that everyone is aware that there's more than one way to do this. And so I also want you to first understand that the state of California does not recognize homeschooling as homeschooling. There's no such thing as homeschooling, even though you hear it all the time. All homeschoolers are either enrolled in a public or a private school. I hope that makes sense. We're going to explain it a little more. So your first option is to file a private school affidavit. I personally feel that this gives you the most freedom to homeschool your child in the manner that you want to homeschool your child. This offers no financial support through a charter school or anything like that. You're completely independently homeschooling. There's a lot of families that do it this way, and there's a lot of community available this way. So we'll talk more in depth about that in a minute. The next option is a private school satellite program. These are wonderful. They give you the same amount of freedom, but I feel like they work really well for families who don't want to take on the responsibility of that record keeping. There's a lot of records you have to keep with a private school affidavit. You have to keep attendance and other things. If you join a private school satellite program, they keep those records for you, and you simply focus on the homeschooling, and you meet with them, some of them only one time a year, to tell them what you've completed over the course of the school year. So we'll talk more about that too. And we have an expert on those with us. And then there's also a district independent study program. This is what I tried first with my son, and I feel like they're a very important niche in our public school system. They work really well for students who want to stay on that curriculum that the district is using. They don't offer the freedom and selection of curriculum that a charter school does, but they offer flexibility in where the child can learn. There's a number of kids who are child actors or sports athletes that do these kinds of programs through their district. There's other reasons that kids use them too. In our local district, I live in the Placentia Belinda School District, and we have an independent study program called Parkview here, and it's a wonderful program. It just didn't happen to work for my son. The next one is the independent study charter school, and this is what most of us parents here have found works really well for our kids because it's kind of a hybrid. We get support from the state, we have a credentialed teacher, and we get access to be able to help direct funding and help direct our child's education. So while still keeping in line with the requirements of the state. Oh, I almost forgot. There's like an exception to the rule. And if you have a credential yourself or you hire a tutor with a credential, then you do not have to do any of the above things. So we'll talk more in depth about that. I actually don't know anyone that's ever done that. I know a group that was working on starting a charter in Brea, and they had hired a teacher from their old school, and they were using her to tutor their students, but I'm not sure really how that ever worked out. So I don't have a lot of experience with this one. Maybe some other people on the panel do.
I want to just say things about those choices. It's so good because you really gave a background. These are the backbones of each of them. But kind of like regular school, a lot of it depends on the teacher you get. So if there's a teacher running a district independent studies program, which I just ended, this beautiful one, it was super free and beautiful and wonderful in Mountain View. The parents could do whatever they wanted. However, there are district independent studies where they give you curriculum to follow, and that's probably more the rule. But sometimes the thing you have to do is actually go and meet each of these teachers, or you kind of have to try them out to see if they work. The charter school, there's thousands of teachers now who teach, could possibly be your teacher in charter, in one of the charter schools, the homeschool charters. And again, that experience, whoever that teacher is going to sort of shape your experience. I mean, you're the main teacher, but if you're meeting with a teacher who really understands homeschooling and unschooling, you might have a really different experience than a brand new teacher who might just got out of teaching school, who got this job and is trying to have you hit all the standards. So it's going to be really, your experience is going to be really varied depending on the teacher that you're interacting with.
Yes, that is always true, and always my first advice to new homeschool families. You need to talk to the program and talk to the teacher you're going to be matched to first and foremost. So that's true for all of the options, except for, of course, the PSA, which you're the teacher. So let's talk about, if you're doing a PSA, families must file that annually between October 1st and October 15th every school year. If you decide you're pulling your child out after October 15th, you would just file it when you pull your child out and you're starting your private school. So you don't need to stress that, oh, I'm only supposed to file between October 1st and October 15th. No, you can do it anytime during the school year that you start, and you do not need to file in the summer. So if you're deciding now you're pulling your child out, you do not need to file until between October 1st and October 15th. So don't worry about filing in the summer. This is where the private school affidavit is found on the California Department of Education's website, and we will have these slides available and send them to everyone that partook in the chat. And then there are also a number of wonderful homeschool organizations in our state that all provide step-by-step instructions on how to complete your PSA. And I have created, last night, I stayed up almost all night to create some resources. And so I created a list of those organizations with links to their websites where they're providing those step-by-step instructions. And if you're filing a PSA, I strongly suggest as a homeschool mom that you join a number of these homeschool organizations that can help support you and protect you. So that's also in the resources that we can share with you. Nancy, go ahead.
Just a quick comment that if you have students that have IEPs currently, like you're coming out of school, your school district is responsible for IEP management and services for your child if you have a PSA or join a private school. So unless you move to another public school, you can still have services if that's something that you would like to have by simply contacting your school district and letting them know what you're doing. In that case, even if you have a credential, I would recommend doing a PSA, because then you have all that number and all the things that are recognizable by your local district.
Oh, that is true. That's a good point. Yes. So
that's really good. And then the language you would use with your school district is that your child is now enrolled in Rainbow School, or whatever you name your school. It's now enrolled in this private school that is within your county, within that district, right?
Yeah, within the district boundaries. And I just did this with a family. I'm with Heartland Charter School, and I have a family that's going to go independent next year. I'm very excited for them. And she simply scheduled a meeting with their special education department, brought her students' IEP, and explained the situation. And they very graciously asked her at what level she wanted them to be involved. And she was able to express what she needed, and they were able to fulfill her needs. It's very simple and not scary.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
And before we move on, we have a couple of audience questions regarding PSAs. Is this a good time to get those?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So Lisa J on Facebook is asking, for those who are thinking of filing a PSA, does that look different depending on what state you are in? And then also, do you all have any tips on where to start after you file? Considerations in terms of any legal protection, keeping records to be able to show authorities if needed, etc.
So is she outside of California? So we're sharing mostly information about California. The homeschooling laws are different and vary from state to state. So what I would strongly suggest is that she look at HSLDA's page, their website, and join that. They will support families that want to homeschool, and they actually will do that like worldwide. They fight for families all over the world for their right to homeschool. So that's what I would personally suggest. And they also have step-by-step instructions on how you can register to be a homeschooler in your state if possible.
Okay, and then I've got another question from Mikey. It's Meike. So if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. Her question is, if I go with a charter school, will I have any problems switching to a PSA at a later time? And do you need to wait a certain time frame before leaving a charter, and or are there any penalties for leaving a charter school?
That is a great question. I love that question. I want everyone to know that you always have the right at any moment in time to pull your child from any school and file a PSA or move them to a new school. Never let a school tell you that, oh, you can't withdraw your child right now, or you can't homeschool your child. The best advice is don't tell them that you're homeschooling. Like Nancy and Shauna said, you say, my child's enrolled in the name of this private school. Our private school for my son is called Homeschool Haven. So I'd say my child is enrolled in Homeschool Haven private school, and I send them a letter. I also created, for the resources that I'll send out, a withdrawal sample letter for families that's just very simple to the point, and really that's all you need to say. So I'll share that. So no, they can't stop you, and you can do it at any time, and you don't get in trouble for doing that. I hope that makes sense. Anyone else want to share more? Nancy?
Just to be a little careful about the overlap if you are entering a charter school, because one cannot be dually enrolled in a private and a public school. And you are actually a real life private school when you have a PSA. So it's necessary to make sure that you go online and take care of ending or disenrolling. You can keep it and have a zero population of students in it before you enroll in a charter school.
Yeah, so just make sure that in your letter that I've created the sample for, that you put the date of your withdrawal the day before you're filing your PSA, or the day before the child enrolls in your PSA or in a charter school. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay.
Yes. And then, okay, and just to reiterate, because we're getting a couple of follow-up questions, hslda.org is a great place for help on how to file your PSA. Instructions and things like that are all right there on their website.
And I will post on the live thing a link to the resources at the end.
Thank you.
Edits, but I will give that to everyone. So if you don't want to stress out about writing things down, you can come back to the live thing, and there'll be a linked folder with all of the resources that we put together for you.
Awesome. And then Mikey has a couple of follow-up questions still specific to PSA, so I hope it's okay if I pose them now. Also, if I decide to establish a PSA, what are the requirements before the October 1st file date? She is located in Los Angeles, she said. Okay. And do I begin teaching in August and keep track of certain things? So she's wanting more specifics, I guess, on PSA.
Well, that's this slide right here that we're going to talk about. So these are kind of the overall requirements that you have to do if you're filing a PSA. You need to track your students' daily attendance. What I hear most families do and what I'm currently doing, just so you know, my kids have always been with a charter school. This past year, mid-year, I pulled my oldest son out because the charter school was changing how they were working with high schoolers, and it made me uncomfortable and made him uncomfortable. So we pulled him out, and we are now filing a PSA for the first time in 11 years. And so what I do is I just have a calendar, and it says on it, days absent are marked in red. And then there's no days absent, there's no marks in red because my child is always learning. So that's easy, done, check off. You just get that calendar and put it in your folder. Then instruction must be provided in English. Instructors must be capable of teaching. Just know that there is no requirement in the California Ed Code that mandates that teachers in a private school that they have to have special training or hold a credential. So you don't have to have training or hold a credential to teach your child through a PSA. You must have like a list of the so what I'm looking for, the courses of instruction. So you would just write that your school offers language arts, math, science, social studies, etc. And then you have to maintain an immunization record, like an enrollment form for your students. But know that through the PSA, a student does not have to be immunized. So you don't have to have your child fully immunized to teach them at home. Okay, so now go back. What did I miss from the questions, or does anyone have anything else to add?
So her questions were, do I begin teaching in August and keep track of certain things, then file a PSA on October 1st?
Okay, so you're going to design your school year whenever you want. So you don't file until October 1st to October 15th, but if you want to start school the day after Labor Day, then you start school that day. So that is on your daily attendance calendar. You know, you could write on it first day of school and last day of school. So you design that. You start school when you want to. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
And then she says, also besides notifying my daughter's school that she won't be continuing there and requesting her school records, is there anything else that needs to be done? Which we did already address, but if you want to.
I would like to give a little bit of insight on the ordering the records. So in the view of a public district school, you are the parent. So you're going to write the letter withdrawing your child from the school and telling them what school your child is going to. And then that letter is going to state you will receive a records request from and the name of your school. Then you're going to go and you're going to write a separate letter, and I can put one in the resources. It might just take me a little bit longer. You're going to write a separate letter, and this letter is not from parent of so child. This letter is from the administrator of your new private school, and that letter is going to request the student records for your child, and you're going to sign it. It can say your name, but then it's going to say underneath of your name whatever the title is that you chose when you filed your PSA. So I think we are like head of school. I think my husband is head of school and I'm some other title. So that's what we signed it. So if you send a records request to your school as mom requesting the records, you're not going to get the cum file. You have to request it as your new school.
They have to give you some kind of record, but you'll get a redacted set of records. You won't get everything. And if you have special needs particularly, I would even make a letterhead with your new school name and all the stuff at the top of the page so that you get everything.
Yes. So you want the letters to differentiate between you as parent and you as the head of this new school. And I think, Nancy, that's great advice, to create a letterhead that has the school address and everything on it. Does that make sense to everyone in our group? So I can make sure it makes sense to those on Facebook?
It needs to make sense. I left a charter school to get an affidavit for my son, same reason as you. High school got too rigid, needed to do my own thing.
Right.
They sent me redacted records. Me, who had been an administrator in their school, sent redacted records. So I made the whole thing, did it the other way, and got the rest of the
Right. Yes. So that is a real thing. I experienced that and had other parents experience that at the same time as me.
So just to clarify, so people can understand this, as you are the administrator of your school and you have your address as the same mom and you are using the same name, do people run into problems, or do you recommend anything different? If people run it, you still could say, like, I'm Shauna Reiswitz, here's my address. We have Rainbow and Unicorn School. I want all the records. Like, even if the floofy name.
So I think Nancy's advice is right. We did create a letterhead with a logo. I mean, Joshua made it for me, but you could just pull some clip art down, create a logo, Rainbows and Unicorns Private School at the top. And yes, it's going to have your home address on it as your letterhead.
Not a problem.
And yes, you're going to sign your name as Wendy Eklund, but underneath my name, I put head of school for Rainbows and Unicorns Private School.
Okay.
And that differentiates between me, mom, asking for records and private school asking for records.
And schools have to comply with that.
Yes, they have to comply with that. I believe they have 10 days to send the records out.
Great. I just wanted to clarify because I've had people ask me that and I wanted to hear how you answer.
PSA has a number and you include that as well.
Yes.
And also you can pull form letters off the internet that look official. You need to do that too.
Yes.
They're not going to notice.
It has all of these instructions for you as well. But yes, when you file your PSA, it comes back. If you file it online, it comes back with like a confirmation sheet and you have information about your school. So you can include that in the bottom or like under the address, like private school identification number, something like that. I didn't have to do that to get my school records, but if your school is really giving you a hard time, you may want to suggest that. I believe I did hear one parent say when they were withdrawing their child about the same time as me, that the school was asking for a copy of the family's filed PSA. And I was not willing to give the school my whole PSA filing. HSLDA said there was no problem with that, but I just felt like that was none of their business. As homeschool mom, I didn't want them having everything. And so I just created the letter and then that sufficed and they sent me his records. Sorry.
Okay, we have 2 more questions on PSAs, and then it looks like we're clear to move on to the next section. So the next question is from Shannon on Facebook, and she is saying, in California, there is a deadline in October on filing PSAs. Can you explain what this deadline means for those starting out with their PSA, since it's a bit confusing?
So that deadline is really in regards to think of the private school up the street. Like the very first school that Athens tried was Heritage Oak. It's a private school here in Yorba Linda, right up the street. They're there. They have a brick and mortar building. Every year, they have to file their PSA between October 1st and October 15th. But the year they were a new school, pretend, they didn't start school until January. Maybe they started second semester. They would then file it right when they're in new school in January. So because homeschool families aren't brick and mortar private schools, anytime you pull your child out and file the PSA, you can submit the PSA if it's after October 15th. But the next school year, if your child is staying on your PSA, you would have to file between October 1st and October 15th. Did that make sense to everybody?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And then the last question regarding PSAs is, in California, if your child has special needs, the school cannot charge you for copies of records if you state that payment for copies is a financial burden. When requesting as a private school, can the school charge you for copies of the records?
No, not if you're sending the letter from the school as the school. They should not be charging you. Okay, Christine, what are you saying? Sorry, you typed something. If you don't give your current school notice, however, but you can have CPS called if you were enrolled and just don't show up and don't respond to them. So you would always want to give your school that you're withdrawing your child from, you always want to tell them that you're withdrawing your child. And then after that withdrawal date, so you don't want the kid enrolled in two schools and you don't want that past school wondering where your child is. You want to be very honest. My child is now enrolled in Rainbows and Unicorns private school. And then they know that they're not supposed to question you. Some schools, I have heard horror stories. And that is why I would suggest you join one of these organizations that offers legal help. And they're CHN, HSC, CHIA, HSLDA. There's a number of them, so you have a lot of choices. So yeah, if CPS shows up, you basically don't answer your door, and then you call for help from HSLDA or the organization that you've joined.
Sounds good. Okay, that's the PSA questions I have if you want to go to the next one.
Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to talk about private school satellite programs. Shauna, do you want to take this one so people don't get sick of my voice?
Well, private school, a satellite program is when you have a program that you could kind of find online. I have one. It's called Pacific Sands Academy. It's a little private school. I file the PSA every year, and you could join a school like mine, and then you're done. You don't have to worry about anything else. I find this sometimes helps with family members who don't understand homeschooling. It's useful to say, well, I enrolled my kid in a private school, and you have pretty much the same freedom that you have with a PSA, but you don't have to worry about anything because you have your child enrolled in an actual private school. Different PSAs offer different support. I do a mentoring program for teens that they pay a tuition if they want support, or they could just enroll and do it their own thing. But for teenagers, for instance, I do a mentoring program. So for a tuition, the students can set up meetings with me 1 to 4 times a month. I'm going to actually contract out to somebody else who they could have actually daily meetings with next year if they're interested. So you could get various levels. Like that's something that I offer. Others offer like family meetings or field trips, or some offer kind of classes. So there's different things that are offered with different PSPs. Let me see what the slide says. Yeah, so they're not free. I mean, you have to pay the person to do it. You could, and again, you could just do your own PSA, and it's basically the same thing. But the PSP gives you some semblance of community. Right. It also gives you, like I said, like a whole thing that you could just tell your mom or your aunt or your sister that, yeah, I enrolled them in a private school. And sometimes that's useful. For my students, they like that they're actually working with a teacher on classes. And as you get into high school, it gets a little more complicated with transcripts and what would a normal transcript look like and how do you make them? Well, then I take care of all of that for you. Or your PSP person would do it. Yeah. Sometimes they'll do field trips, park days, newsletters, all that kind of stuff. Yes. And it's, yeah, you do get a lot of freedom in it. And depending on how they run, whether some are very local and others are more online. Mine's an online one.
And they do offer a variety of supports. And I think besides being able to say my child's in this private school, if you don't want to build that transcript, then you're going to want to pay one of these. The fees are really very reasonable. I'm always very impressed with the amount of money that our PSPs are offering their services for. They're clearly people with a heart for supporting homeschoolers. So if you're not comfortable, you want the freedom of the PSA, but you want support in being able to get advice, have your student talking to someone else, have someone else keeping those records for you, then a PSP is the way to go. In the resources I created last night, I listed a number of PSPs. Sometimes I get them confused and say the wrong initials, but I listed a bunch of PSPs and a list and linked to a list where you can research additional PSPs if you don't like the ones that I linked to. So that will be shared as well. So PSPs are also a great choice. Is there more slides?
Wendy, I have a question that it's funny that I'm asking right here in this forum. about this, but I wonder if you know. So as a PSP, I often have been kind of collecting immunization records. I have yet, though, to really, because most people haven't needed to because it's a homeschool program or haven't had immunizations. But if I make an immunization card for somebody, like, then they could take that immunization card to, if somebody gives me their records, I create the card, then they could take that card to enroll in another school. Is that how the immunization stuff works?
Okay, so if the child is fully immunized,
if the child, if they give the PSP their immunization records, because one of the things that schools do is that they create those immunization blue cards.
Yeah, so you can actually, Shauna, you could just download that form. I have a link to it. It's right on the internet. You could just download that form and have your parents submit it. And then, you just drop it into the CUME file. And if that child then leaves your school, you would just forward that. Now,
I haven't had to do that yet, but I was just curious about how that worked.
I can help you with that. The catch is that children that are not fully immunized, so those children right now, because of SB 277, cannot go to a district school that's has a classroom. So they can't go to a public district school. They can't go to a private school that has a classroom either. The only exception was homeschool or non-classroom based program. So a PSP would be a non-classroom based program as long as they're not one of the ones that's offering classes. And
that brings up another thing. The district independent studies programs often require the full immunization, whereas the other PSAs, PSPs, and charter schools at this point do not.
Independent study charter schools, right. So that is kind of a complicated thing to try and understand. So if people have specific questions about that, I'm happy to talk about it more at the end, where we can actually have a back and forth conversation. You can turn on your microphones and we can discuss it, because sometimes I think it's hard to explain when I'm not getting like banter back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Before we move on from PSPs, I just had one question from Shannon on Facebook. Are staff or administrators of PSPs required to hold credentials?
No. So like we said with PSA, it's the same situation. Private schools in California, the teachers are not required to have any special training or credentials. So many of I grew up going to private school and none of my teachers had credentials. So I hope that makes sense. So it's not a requirement, but some schools then do require that of their teachers. So it's up to the school and how they're designing their program. Okay, so now we're talking about district independent study programs. Nancy, do you want to talk about this, or do you want me to take it? Or Denise, you know a lot about these programs as well. Anyone else? Okay.
My knowledge is outdated because these become more and more restrictive as time goes on.
Right.
So the one I started in the 80s was as free as anything you could ever imagine. And now it looks a whole lot like the district curriculum that you execute in your home.
Yeah, that was my experience as well. Now, Shauna was talking about one near her that's beautiful and free. So, So my experience—
dependent on the teacher you get, though.
Yeah, that's totally true. But my experience with an ISP was, my problem with it was that I was given those same textbooks that the district uses, and that wasn't going to work for my child. And so I had to look for something else. So that was really my only issue with the whole entire program. Like the one by me has a beautiful arts program. They do science things. I have all kinds of in-person experiences, but it just was not going to work for Ethan because of the curriculum. If I had had a choice of curriculum, we probably would still be at that school, but I didn't have that choice. So independent study programs in California are offered by some school districts. Not all school districts have them. There are also some county offices of education that offer ISPs. These schools typically follow the curriculum and educational plan of that school district, and you should check with the school district to see what programs they offer and what grade levels they offer. Like the County of Orange has a high school program and a TK through 8 program. So 2 separate programs. Student progress is assessed throughout the school year with assignment tracking, work records, curriculum, quizzes and tests, benchmark testing, state standardized testing. Parents and students are required to have frequent meetings, online, in person, via the phone with their credentialed teacher. That's also going to look different depending on the requirements of each of these ISPs, district ISPs. Families, again, should talk to their district. Another thing to know here is that, say you live in a district that doesn't have an independent study program through their district, but you find out that, say, the district next door does have one. You are able to enroll your child in that district, the other district. What you have to get is an inter-district transfer form. So you go to your district and you say, my student needs an independent study program. We don't have one here within our district. I've looked at the website. I've reviewed all of the schools that we have here as a choice, and none of these are going to work. I want my child to go to so-and-so school in the neighboring district. Can I get an inter-district transfer? And then they will communicate with that district, making sure there's room for the child. You need to let that district know that you're interested in signing up for that program there. They're going to let you know if there's room. And then there's communication between these offices, and they either grant you it or they don't. So my personal experience, when Parkview didn't work out for us, I learned about this amazing program at Orangethorpe School in Fullerton, and it's a multi-age classroom. The teacher produces the work for the students independently, like her own creation. It's a beautiful program. And so I'm like, oh, I want to put my child there. Our district didn't want to release him because they have their own independent study program. So let's just say that there was a very heated argument in the district office between myself and the superintendent. And they did end up granting a 1-year inter-district transfer. We ended up ultimately not going with that program. We ended up homeschooling. But just so you know, there may be a battle involved. There may not be a battle involved. It's all going to depend on whether or not your school district has a program they feel can fulfill the needs of your child. If they feel that way, you're going to have to come up with the reasons why it's not going to work for your child and be ready to argue that. I hope that makes sense. Nancy.
Just about who might want to do this. If you are not schooling because the COVID restrictions are looking ugly, but your children are planning on re-entering their classroom, these programs often have on-campus pieces, so that if it isn't quite open yet and you're still needing to do independent study, your child might be able to do something on campus. Or if you're in it for a year, even 2 years, often there are on-campus pieces that your child can participate in if they're really wedded to their friendship group, their social lives, a particular sport, but the academic piece of school isn't working. This tends to be a good choice. The seamless move back into the classroom is sometimes really important to kids, that they are in the same place as their friends can be very, very meaningful. For a long-term commitment, it's most likely that as a family, if you start here, you will want more freedoms as you become more familiar with homeschooling. So in all approaches, this is typically a shorter term option. These can be fantastic though. My kids were in every high school musical because we were affiliated with the district. It was a very nice relationship, and we didn't have so many rules back in the day.
Yeah, and I have a lot of friends who are very happy at these programs. So just because my experience wasn't everything I wanted it to be doesn't mean that they're not wonderful programs and can work for certain children. I think you know your child best, and you're the one that's going to assess which program is going to best work for your child. We just want to educate you in your options. So I should keep my personal comments to myself. Okay.
I wanted to say something, notice, because I've been involved in a homeschool community in Southern California and Northern California. And one of the things I noticed is that Southern California has a really wide variety of potential charter schools and fewer in-district homeschool ISP independent study programs. Northern California, or Santa Cruz County, has if anyone here is from Santa Cruz County, they're wonderful district independent studies programs. They offer field trips, trips to Oregon for Shakespeare festivals, great teen groups. So it kind of depends really, again, on your county and the teacher you end up with. We have a program that always does this wonderful play every year. So Santa Cruz County really has, and my kids have been enrolled in it, over time. It's wonderful. So and we have up here in Santa Cruz kind of one charter program that we could join.
Right.
So it really depends. So I've noticed that the diversity of charters is lacking up in the Northern California, but there's a huge diversity of charters in Southern California. There is a little bit more diversity in the district independent study programs in Northern California. Having said that, Mountain View just got rid of the one that I was running. So, so I don't know. I mean, they also kind of get on weird chopping blocks too, and districts want to get rid of them, and they're not necessarily favored by their school district. However, if you're kind of a revolutionary type person and you want to push your district, I think that now is the time to go to your district and say, we want a homeschool program, or we're going to leave and join a charter, or we're going to leave and file a PSA, because they're going to start losing a lot of money from all the people who don't want to send their kids back into the classroom this year.
That's so true. Yeah, definitely look around, see your options. If you need help in finding your options, I'm very good at doing that research. I know that on my Facebook page, California Homeschool Charter School Group, we have a lot of families that ask, oh, what are my options in this county? And then I'll post a list of all their options, or as many options that I find that I think are going to be what they're looking for. So I'll share my contact information if you need help, personal help in that. I am always happy to personally help a family as well, as I know many of our other panelists are going to be willing to do. So if that's a specific issue you're having, is finding school options or what to say to your district to start a program like this, please let me know. This one is a quick one. The credentialed teacher tutor option. A parent or guardian with a valid California teaching credential may instruct their children under the private tutor exemption. They may provide instruction to their children for the grades and subjects that they hold their credential in. So you'd only be able to do this if you have a multi-subject, that works for grade school. Then you can only do it from then. Then you have to hire a tutor or find another program. Same applies to the credentialed teacher. And then this has a requirement that the student instruction must occur between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. and must last for no less than 3 hours a day and must take place for 175 school days each year. I think the point that you made, Nancy, that you might still want to file that PSA to have your child in a school for requesting records and all of those things, I think is a fair point. And like I said, I don't know anyone that's actually done this successfully for a long period of time. I'm sure there's people out there that have done it. I just don't personally know them. I just wanted people to be aware of it, that it is an option. Okay, let's move on. Independent study charter schools. So these are public schools and they receive state funding. So I know there's been a lot of talk in the media over the last couple of years that charter schools are privately run organizations that are taking money from our public schools, and they're not. They're still public schools, so please don't get that confused. There's also kind of different charter schools there's a lot of variations. We have brick and mortar charter schools where the kids come to class up to 5 days a week. There's hybrid charter schools where the kids are only coming a couple of days a week to the charter school, and then the other days they're supported with independent study. Then there's fully independent study models. These are what we in the community have dubbed homeschool charter schools. And then there's virtual or online model charter schools, and those ones are the ones that they have adopted a set of curriculum that you can choose from. Whereas the homeschool independent study model has more kind of freedom for you to be able to select the curriculum of your choice. Enrollment requirements are the same as any public school in California. You're going to have to prove your child's age. You're going to have to prove that you live within an area that school can service. So an interesting thing with charter schools that are independent study or non-classroom based is the actual term. They are authorized. So say I submit a charter petition to Orange County, to a district in Orange County, and I am authorized by that district in Orange County. I am then authorized to serve, if I want to and have the staff to support them, students in Orange County and every county that touches Orange County. So LA, what are my counties here? Riverside, San Diego, San Bernardino. So I could open my enrollment to all students in those areas that want to join the independent study model. Oh, Los Angeles, did I say that one? Anyways, I sometimes need the map in front of me to know who my county is touching, but yeah. And then schools can choose to serve less areas if they're, if they just can't support that. And that would be true also for an online virtual school. You also need to provide immunization records. If you have an IEP, you would upload that at the time of enrollment. You would also, or a 504 plan, you would bring that and upload that. You would also, what else is required? Proof of residency, and then a vaccination card. So you would need to, now, and some of the schools differ. So if it's a school that has an in-person learning center, to come to that center, they're going to require that your child is fully vaccinated or immunized. And if it's a completely independent study model, they might just ask you for a blank card. Just put your name on it, put the student's name on it, leave the shot records blank and upload that, because SB 277 made it that a student can enroll in an independent study, non-classroom based charter. I keep calling it the wrong thing. It's a non-classroom based charter or a non-classroom based school program and not have all of their immunizations. That's as of now. So they will allow you to do a blank one. And then this is the same thing Shauna's already talked about, and I'm very passionate about this. I feel like your teacher is going to make or break that experience. So you're going to want to talk to that teacher before. And my story with that is when I first signed up for charter schools, it was kind of a year like this year where they were all full and on wait lists. And so I picked the first school because it gave the most funding. And I was like, oh, I hope I get into that school. And then they're like, oh, no, we're on a wait list. And then I picked another school that had less funding, but had a couple of other things that I liked. And so I'm like, okay, I hope I get into that one. And then they were full. So then I did another one that was even less funding, but had other things. And so I'm like, they were full. So I'm like, okay, well, now I'm just going to go with whoever puts me in first. Well, they all called me within 20 minutes of each other. And so I was like, hey, I have this crazy opportunity to interview these teachers prior to enrolling in the school. So you're not technically enrolled in the school until you sign what is called a master agreement. And I think we'll talk about that in a little while. But so I interviewed all the teachers, 2 of them in person and 1 of them over the telephone. And funny enough, I went with the school that gave the least amount of funding because I fell in love with that teacher and the time she took to talk to me, the flexibility that she was willing to show me in supporting Ethan. And she spent a long time talking to me and finding out why the programs we had used in the past didn't work, how she felt we could make homeschooling work. She then the next week showed up to my house. Instead of bringing all that district material, she showed up with a box of homeschool curriculum and hands-on little like science in a nutshell kits and all this cool stuff that he just really loved. And so I went with that school and we were there for 6 years and I loved them and they really took good care of us. So it's not always about the money. It's about that connection with that teacher. So in these independent study charter school models, non-classroom based, students are required to meet with their teacher monthly. Some schools allow that to be virtually online with a platform that you can see each other. Others require it be in person. So that's something you need to talk to the school about. There's a variety of schools like that for grading. Some grades are required, others grades are optional in the elementary ages. But most of them grading is required in high school and middle school. So that's something you can ask about if you care about that. I personally didn't want my kids graded in elementary school. So I liked schools that didn't require us to assign letter grades to them because they don't count for anything anyway. But other families really, really want that grading. And so having an option is nice. Common Core is a requirement of all public schools. So your teacher will be working with you to track the progress you're making through those Common Core standards. You are required to do state testing in any public school, and charter schools typically offer a benchmark testing. What that does is it helps them show their stakeholders, so their authorizer, anyone that's their school, like their own personal school board, like how the students are doing. If they're going for a WASC accreditation, that kind of data is important. Many of them offer instructional funds, which you help direct with your teacher to help guide your student through their learning plan. And then they offer a vendor list that usually is very robust for all of our schools. And you can help your child's education through picking those vendors that you think are going to better engage your child, or classes that they want to take, anything like that. But no public school can buy any religious materials. So make sure that you know that. Does anyone want to add? I feel like I'm talking again.
Just again, like the whole grading, Common Core, progress tracking, that piece is going to be very teacher dependent. Some teachers will just do that behind your back and you don't even have to deal with it. And other teachers,
what kind of teacher does that?
And other teachers are gonna like ask you every single question about it. And there is, I mean, they're humans. These teachers are humans. So you can, if you get a teacher who wants to do that, you could say, you know what, I really don't care that much about the standards. What's the, you know, like I'm happy doing my own thing. Can we talk less about this? You can ask. That might help. But some people want the standards because they want to be able to jump back into a regular, you know, have the flexibility to go back into the regular school, knowing what their kids, you know, so you have a little bit of power in it. But again, is a lot of things are going to be teacher dependent. That piece especially.
With that first school that I was with, they're the ones that taught me all of this information. And that teacher was amazing. At first, she would give me an assignment sheet based on what we were supposed to be doing. And it would make me crazy because I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a little obsessive compulsive. So instead of being able to be free about what we could do and like really allowing me to embrace how Athen needed me to teach him, I would get obsessed with checking off those check boxes. And so then I was at the point where I was like, I am putting him back in school because I would rather like have him be upset with a stomach ulcer in school than me ruining my relationship with him, trying to fight over getting this math curriculum done. And so, like you said, Shauna, I was completely honest with my teacher and I was like in tears with her on the phone. Athen was in the house with my grandma and I was out pacing on the lawn crying. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm fighting with him. I said, I can't get him to do math. You know, I have to check off all these boxes. And she said to me, Wendy, just throw away the damn math book. And I'm like, wait, what? I can do that? So I wanted to throw away that math book. And that's what opened my eyes that I could create an environment with her that helped me support him in a better way. So then what we started doing was she said, I'm not going to give you these assignment sheets anymore, Wendy. You're not going to look at them because they're making you crazy. And so she would just say, just tell me what you're doing. She started following us on Facebook. She'd see all the field trips we were doing. Back then we used to co-op. She'd see everything we were doing in co-op. She took it upon herself to like view everything we were doing and match it to the standards and track his progress. And she never bothered me about those things. And it was beautiful. And I loved her. And she hired to take care of her own children. And I'm happy for her, but I do still miss her to this day. So
Wendy, you guys bring up two general points that are really important. The first one is that the teacher really matters and you interview first. The second one is, if you choose this option, the more open you are with your teacher, the less likely you're going to be saddled with assignments. It is independent study, non-classroom based law. We, as those teachers, must make assignments and have them due back. The degree to which we don't do that and you get to do it is completely dependent on the transparency of what is happening with your children in your home.
Right.
As teachers, our credentials are on the line, that if we don't know what you're doing and we say you did it and you didn't do it, and there's something terrible happening that we have no knowledge of,
no, it's true.
we can lose a credential, and I've known people who have.
Right.
And so we don't want to take that chance. But most people who want a job in this kind of a school want you to have what you want. Yes. The universal sense that I get from the teachers that I work with is that they want their families to be personally empowered to do what they want with their kids. I have a second business. I'm an optometric vision therapist, and our mission statement is empower parents to work with their children. That this is what we can all do. And the way you get it in this kind of a school setting is that you make your homeschool, you let the school help you, and you're transparent with them about what's going on. And then they're not going to make an effort to control your school. They're just not. We don't want to. The second thing just had to do with ordering stuff. When you order stuff from a school, it belongs to the school. It's like a giant library checkout with dollars. And so you are checking stuff out. If it's stuff that you use up and you use it up, then you've used it appropriately and it's gone. And if you don't use it up, you turn it back in, just like you turn something back into a library. So as you're considering, so if you have horseback riding lessons, clearly you're not turning it back in. However, if you have a non-consumable textbook, that thing has to go back. Or a kit, an item of something that you use together and it's not, you don't use it up. So it's important to kind of make that
the distinction. Yeah.
The distinction on the front end, because it isn't, there are some very, very strict laws about schools not enriching individuals, and we need to be careful.
So what she's talking about is a consumable, non-consumable policy at a non-classroom based school. It really would apply to any school because there's certain things that schools buy, even brick and mortar schools, that get used year after year, like she said, textbooks. And then there's other things that get used up in the classroom and they have to buy more of. So the same applies to your experience at a non-classroom based charter school. Anything that you're not using up and it's gone can be used by another family. And so you'll be asked to return that. I typically find most parents want to get it out of their house when they're done with it anyway. And so they're happy to return it to the school when they're done with it. But like I mentioned, that first teacher that we had that showed up to my house with the science in a nutshell kits, those are also non-consumable. So we would get the kits, we would do the experiments, certain pieces of it would disappear and we would use it up. We would return the kit and then the school can actually order the pieces to replace and let another student use it. So those can also be non-consumable. So I was just thinking in regards to Legos, I hear a lot of families saying like, oh, we want our Legos to be consumable because we lose them. But honestly, like at the same school, they had a bucket of Legos that had been returned that had pieces missing, and kids could check out those Legos to use for other projects that they're doing, because not everything with Lego has to be built by the instructions. So just think of it in terms of if it can be used by another student, that the school's going to want it back because it, saves them money in returning those items and letting another student use that item.
I just want to make one quick point, if I can. So when we left the independent study with the district and went to a charter school, my teacher had really taught me all the standards, and I would go to bed at night in case they wanted to go back. I wanted to make sure they were on track with their peers and whatnot. And so I understand the standards. I know them for K through, where I have an 11th, 12th grader this coming up year. What I found is a lot of your homeschooling and a lot of your education, it far surpasses what those standards are. So if you're a mom that's like, I don't know, I can't compete or I can't keep up with that, you will be surprised that your basic, interaction and education with your children you're going to be able to check the I can statement. There's a lot of things that you're already doing. So don't be intimidated by that, because that's not a reason to steer away from it if that's, something that you're not interested in doing.
I think that's a great point, because my teacher used to point out to me that every month I would give her this huge long list of things and she'd be like, you are way far going past the standards. That's totally true. The standards, if you look at them, there's really not that much in them, and you can explore them so deeply as a homeschool family in all of your activities that your kids are just getting such a robust education. It's wonderful. So now we just wanted to open it up to open discussion.
I wanted to bring something else up about the charter schools, like the purchasing of curriculum. I think you said this, but the other thing that because I have somebody who's done a long comment in my thread about how, and the gist of it is, how do people access all the wonderful community activities that are out there, and how can we build community hands-on learning opportunities for kids? And I think that this is something that these charter schools have like kind of opened up to with the vendor system. And there are some, especially in Southern California, a very rich network of vendors who do things like hands-on woodwork, or, you know, or dancing or parkour, or all these wonderful things that you can sign up for and use your funds for. And I usually recommend to my families that they try to use a lot of their funds for all these wonderful outdoor community activities. And as this model of homeschooling expands in Northern California, which I hope it does, I think it's an opportunity for people to build businesses and become vendors to these homeschool students. So
a lot of our vendors down in Southern California are homeschool parents that saw a need in the community and started an organization. Mariah started a whole homeschool conference because she saw a need. We have the Arbor in Fullerton, is started by a homeschool mom who saw a need for a learning center in, where do I live? North Orange County. So, and I could go on and on about examples like this, but I think you're totally right. As the movement of homeschooling moves all over California and people are starting to use charter schools, they will start businesses and support and build that community.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting opportunity. And like I said, we don't have it quite as rich up here in Santa Cruz of this kind of charter school vendor system. We do have quite a few vendors for Ocean Grove. But this is something that hopefully can grow. And Rana's asking a good question.
Rana,
you have to answer.
Mariah wanted to say something, and then we'll go to the questions. Mariah, what did you want to say?
I just want to say the Central Valley, we have that exact same thing. We are growing like wildfire here. And so the resources, and we can post that. I can get that to you one day so we can post. There's a lot of good, all different options and a lot of good resources here as well. Yeah.
Maybe we should add a session where we talk about how to start a homeschool service business. That would be a great one.
Yeah, that is a good session.
Okay. Heather, do you want to go over the questions? Because I think you're doing a better job of tracking them for us.
Yeah, we've got a couple of them. So earlier in the session, Rosa had asked from Facebook. She said that she has a 6-year-old social butterfly. She's worried about homeschooling. And she's looking, let's see. She said, my almost 5-year-old son does better in smaller groups and is overwhelmed by large groups. I also want diversity as we are biracial and value that. My daughter thrives with social interaction and age variety. What can I do to prevent boredom and lack of diversity?
So I just kind of want to talk about something that I've noticed. I get that question a lot with new homeschool families. Like, well, how are your children socialized if you're homeschooling them? And like my initial thought to that is, well, how are children socialized in schools? They go to a school that's within their neighborhood with kids all of the same demographics, and they're taught by one teacher in that classroom for the most part. So my children, when we're homeschooling, we're out in the world. We're at park days. Well, my kids don't love park days very much, but sometimes we go to park days, but we're on field trips where they're meeting docents of all different races and of all different ages. And they're with me at the bank. They go with me to, Bailey grew up in my arms going to meetings with me. I worked full time for a charter school, and she went to all of my meetings with me, met everyone I worked with. So they're able to be with people all over from everywhere. And so I feel like that's much more socialization than just sitting in a classroom with 30 kids all from the same neighborhood. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's kind of my take on. Go ahead, Mariah.
It takes less time to do your schoolwork. And so my kids, we found that the first few years of homeschooling, we were too busy socially. So it's kind of funny. You'll really you'll want to do so much that you're going to have to then like, okay, we have to tone back, no more co-ops. We can't do as much because you can be so extremely busy with homeschooling. It's completely different than anything you probably would have imagined, but it's a good balance because you create that balance and your kids will be very interactive in the community. Whereas probably otherwise it's school, it's sports, it's homework, it's bed, you know, it's easy to do.
And when you're in the community, you start seeing all of the different options and you are going to get really good at picking the ones that you want your child. Like I used to hear parents complain like, oh, I'm in this group and there's all these conflicting field trips that are available. And my vision was always like, oh, well then just pick the one. They're all going to pop up again. So pick the one that matches what you want to do right then and there, or the one that the friend that the kids really want to see that day is going on. So you're going to get super savvy in being able to pick those opportunities that you want. And trust me, there's more opportunities than you can ever do in a day. Nancy.
Yeah, I would just add, like, as a homeschooler, I noticed when I started homeschooling, I was done with school usually by 1, especially in elementary school. And so I had tons of time to play with other kids, but also to do a ton of different lessons. And depending on what you put them in, like, for example, it's kind of funny because I'm not even a good singer, but I loved singing. And so I was in this choir group and we would perform for like, you know, nursing homes and then like all different demographics. So just depending on what you put them in, the cool thing is that there's like a lot more time freedom to just make those choices that will be good for your family.
Right. I love that. Somebody else was going to say something.
Just quickly, that we've promised all these activities, but it really is dependent upon where you live and what's going on where you are. And all of the public programs that Wendy has described offer events and activities that are meant to bring some cohesion to the group. And so that you have kids that are having like experiences and getting together regularly built into the programs, as well as using vendor services for charter schools is great too. But as far as how many co-ops there are and opportunities, it's really location dependent.
Well, like I said, you just start them. I had never run a co-op before, and I think I ran co-ops for over a number of years with a number of different. Denise and I did a co-op together. It was so much fun. But yeah, so you can create these opportunities for your kids. You're gonna, meet other people in our groups. Our Facebook groups are a great place to start these discussions. Oh, that reminds me. With the whole teacher matching thing, sometimes the schools can't necessarily match you based on personality to make sure you're a good match. So that's actually the main reason I started my California Homeschool Charter School group, was so parents and teachers could be in there and they could meet prior to enrolling and they could talk to each other. It kind of gets lost in translation because there's so many other things to talk about. But if you want to post in that group, hey, I want to join this charter school. Is there a teacher in here? Please message me. I want to talk to you first. You can actually interview them before enrolling. If you want to, you don't have to, but I think it's really important.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can I add one more thing?
Of course. I love your perspective, Meg, because you're a homeschool graduate.
Thanks. Yeah. And the other thing is, if you, like, let's say you're in a town where there's not as much diversity or not as many opportunities, there's online classes you can take. And depending on the type of online class you take, your kids could be interacting through Zoom with kids who are in other states or even other countries potentially.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to think about as well.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that is going to kind of bring us into high school questions. And we have a couple of those. We have Krista Campbell. She said, help. I have been considering public school because I'm not satisfied with my daughter's writing and math skills. We are also very isolated and missing social and sports. Any help? She is entering high school this year.
Okay. I think she's saying that they're isolated because of COVID maybe. And I'm not really following, I guess. Anyone else following?
Yeah, I think she's probably saying that she's isolated right now and they miss social opportunities and sports, but since she's going into high school, she wants to know that those are still going to be available.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Please elaborate.
Sorry, I had to figure out the Zoom on my phone. No, isolated socially. Not just right now. We see she sees kids riding around. We live in a beach town, so she sees groups of friends, groups of people, and we just don't have that experience. And it's really, really, really tough. And if SB 277 hadn't prohibited us from putting her in high school, I probably would have really, really been really tempted to go ahead and do it. In fact, I was really tempted. I thought maybe I could find a loophole or find a way around, and I just can't. And yeah, I feel like we've been doing this 5 years. Next year will be our 6th year. And it feels like, I don't know. It's what I thought it would be great, and maybe it's my failure. I don't know. So if anyone has any words for me or has been here, I would love to hear it.
Krista, are you part of a charter school? How are you homeschooling?
Yeah, we're with iLead now. I had to switch to iLead because Inspire dropped our vendor, but she's attending classes 3 days a week through iLead at a vendor. So she goes 3 days a week, but I still don't feel like the academics are very good. Like I'm frustrated. I wanted to homeschool. I wanted to have an excellent student. I wanted, I don't know what, I feel like I don't know what went wrong. And now here we are in 9th grade.
If we could help you find some vendors, I think that could fill the gap, that might help. And then does iLead, I don't know what community you live in, but I thought that they did a really good job at creating community with field trips and other activities to get them interacting with each other, the students that are involved, not experiencing that they're offering enough things in your area.
Then the high school, it was, we had a lot of things to do when the girls were little. As they get older, it just seems less and less her age kids. And then now the ones we meet live in Santa Ana, Yorba Linda, Fullerton. And maybe I'm asking too much out of life, to be honest, for the life that we've chosen. Maybe I'm just not going to get, I don't know, but I wonder, is it too late? Like, is it too late to, I don't know. I'm surrounded by, I had to run in the back of the house. I'm surrounded by people right now. So I don't know if I'm being very clear, but
no,
you're frustrated.
No, I totally get
sad.
it. I'm sorry. So I think it's not too late. We just need to find that community for you that your daughter's going to fit into. And I do know that there's a number of Facebook groups. You're not on Facebook though, right?
No, I'm not. Okay. But I guess maybe I should do that.
Yeah, there's a number of Facebook groups that literally focus on the tween and teen years, and they offer prom, they offer dances throughout the school year where the kids can come together and meet each other. So I love them as a resource. I don't know if Sharon's listening, but I could connect you with Sharon Anderson. She's a wonderful resource, and try and figure out the not Facebook thing. So I have your telephone number, I believe. So let's connect afterwards. But I think that you're right. Finding your community is important. And so most of the groups, like when I first started homeschooling, most of the groups were on Yahoo groups, and you would just get these like funny emails that just had a bunch of words. Well, then slowly over time, everybody moved to Facebook, and families that aren't on Facebook, I do hear that a lot, that they feel like the community is gone, but it's not, it's on Facebook. But if you don't want to use Facebook, and I know people have good reasons for not wanting to be on Facebook, then let me help you personally find the things in your area that are happening, so we can try and fix that. I feel bad that you're in that situation. So
may I add something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel her, I feel her very closely to me. One, because I have a 12-year-old, a preteen. Another, because I have many friends that were in her same situation. And yes, most of the groups that are for teenage, they are on Facebook. Like Facebook is like a wealth of networking, communication, groups, and all the community has been built there. Another thing that people is not comfortable when using Facebook, a friend of mine recommended me to use Band, the app Band. So And there is like little groups that you can get together, and we were sharing. There are many groups in there as well, but it's more like personally, more closely, I will say that, if I can say that, because many parents is like, for me, I'm looking for kids around my son's age. Could be a little bit younger. He loves older kids. So we have been together for like networking each other. Like, I tell the mom who knows the kid that is a good kid, that is a good fit for us. And that is how we have that community. We don't have like 20 friends. Maybe I can count them with my 5 fingers on one hand, and those are my kids' best friend. Another good opportunity for us has been sports. Like, my son he plays hockey since he was 6 years old. He's 12 now. So most of his best friends, boy friends, are from that groups, from that community of hockey. So we have our hockey community. My daughter has her jiu-jitsu community. Both my kids do rock climbing, so they get their friends from different groups. And if I see that they are closer to some kids, I get the mom's phone, the friend's phone, and I go for it. Like, I try to get that networking, and then they do the magic. And my kids have really good friends, but at the beginning, when he was like 10, he was missing or wanting more of that community for his own age. So for me, that has worked. I just wanted to share that. And I'm so sorry how this mommy feels, but I know there's a lot of community. Please reach out. There are great, wonderful moms like Wendy that are willing to help and connect, just networking. And have a wonderful day, and welcome to the new parents. I've been homeschooling for 7 years.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I do have another idea too, if there's time. Okay, so when I was homeschooling, I had some friends. There was like these 4 girls. They were all sisters, and they had the same problem. So what their mom did was she just started at her home, but it wouldn't have to be at your home. It could be at a park or a friend's house. Basically, it started really small, and for you, it could focus. It was just a group that met once a week, and for you, it could focus on anything, just like a common interest that your kids have, or that your child has, or your teen has. It could just start with 2 or 3 friends, but she made it open invite. So in her case, it was a Bible study, which in your case, it could be anything. It could be like a group that gets together and knits. It could be a group that loves photography and they go to parks. But basically, she made it, the reason that it grew to be like 30 girls was she made it open invite. So every girl that was there invited her friends. And so that way her daughters were able to make a lot of new friends. And then, they could all watch an instructional video together, or something like that, like take a video class together or something along those lines, so that they're getting the education and the social time. So that really helped her kids. Like, they started off being like having almost no friends, even though they were really sweet girls, being like some of the more popular girls who had like all the friends. Not that it's about popularity, but it just was a great solution for them. So that might be something to consider too.
Where did she find the people?
It just started off with her 4 daughters, and they each knew, I think they each only had like maybe one friend. And so then their friend invited a friend, and then their friend invited a friend. And the mom would just put out some bags of chips, and we would all just hang out, and it was really fun. So even if she just knows like one person, even if that person's not her best friend, she might meet her best friend through that person, inviting more people.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Can I add one more resource really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not necessarily homeschool or charter school kids that you'll find, but meetup.com is also an option. If you go on meetup.com, there's a lot of different groups and different age groups that are offering something like that, like a group or an open-ended group where you show up and play board games, or you go and do yoga in the park, or it's a walking group, or whatever it is, whatever your interests are. You and your daughter could go and feel it out and try to make connections there. And that's another option if you don't have access to Facebook and you don't want to. Meetup.com is another place where you can try out some different groups.
Yeah, and you can literally search Meetup by like common interests, and it will show you the groups. And then if there's something that you want to like host, I can help you get the word out about, you know, maybe you're going to have a beach meetup and you want it open to kids. I can help you post it on Facebook, and then I can help you get people there if you want to do that. So let's talk and figure out how we can fix this for you.
We'll stay in touch, Wendy. Thank you so much, everyone.
Heather, was there more questions?
Yes. We have, let's see. Can you please discuss graduating early, concurrent enrollment, and CHSPE?
Okay, concurrent enrollment. Oh, the CHSPE and concurrent graduating early. Okay, so
yeah.
The way you graduate early is to do more high school courses all at one time and earn a lot of credits, and then you're done. A lot of families that homeschool do that through the community college system. So take, for instance, my son. We've saved his foreign language. I knew that he wasn't socially or emotionally ready to do junior college classes yet, or community college classes his first 2 years. So he's going to be in 11th grade. So we saved his foreign language so he can take American Sign Language this year, and in 1 year he can complete both years of his high school requirement. So when you're doing concurrent enrollment in college, the classes are a lot of the classes are weighted heavier, and you'll get more credit in high school. So if you want to get done early, you can do it that way. You can also test out with the CHSPE. I don't know a lot about that. Nancy, do you know anything about the CHSPE? Did we lose Nancy?
I know about it.
Oh, go ahead, Shauna.
So, I mean, I'm looking for that question in our thread. Could somebody just read it and repeat it to me really fast? Because there seem like,
Sure.
Okay, graduating early, concurrent enrollment.
Yeah. Can you please discuss graduating early, concurrent enrollment, and CHSPE?
Okay, I see that. Okay, so this again goes back to what type of school you are enrolled in. If you're enrolled in a district independent study or the independent study charter school, you need to follow the graduation requirements of that school. Right. Sometimes you can graduate early by as Wendy said, like complete classes quickly. Taking community college classes gives you extra units, and it's quite easy to do it in 3 years in many of these schools. Right. Concurrent enrollment means that you're enrolled in a high school and community college concurrently. So that high school could be an independent study charter school, or it could be a PSP, PSA. I just had a student graduate from my PSP she actually decided to take an extra year in high school so she could also get an AA in the same year. So she graduated this year with a high school diploma and an AA at the same time. She just wanted to do it that way, but you don't have to. So you could do concurrent enrollment, and the nice thing about concurrent enrollment is the community colleges are free that way. But the hard thing about concurrent enrollment is that you often can't get whatever class you want. There's some limitations and waiting lists and things to wait for to make sure you get in that class. And there's a little bit of paperwork you have to fill in with your high school, with your public school or your private school, and the community college. The other way to get into community college or to graduate so there's a kind of another way you could graduate early. You can join, and I'm in the business of doing that actually with my Pacific Sands Academy. I help kids graduate early. If they're ready to come to my program and graduate in that same year, I work with them. As a private school, you can have your own graduation requirements. They don't have to meet the state graduation requirements. So I have a graduation requirement of completing an online portfolio celebrating what your interests and passions are. And that's my graduation requirement. They can meet that at age 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, or 20, 18, any age. So that's another way to do it. You can also you can also enroll your child in a this could be like its own topic. Like maybe we should do this one day.
Yeah, we
But
should.
you can also enroll your child in your own PSA, because in order to take the CHESP, you have to be enrolled in your second semester of your sophomore year. So you can enroll your child if you have a 14-year-old who you want to take the CHESP. You can enroll your child in your own PSA, claim that they're a sophomore, wait till that spring, and they can take the CHESP. The CHESP gives them all the graduation it's the same as getting a high school diploma in the state of California. So if you finish the CHESP, you could go on to community college as a full-fledged community college student. So there's kind of a lot of topics, and I'm sure that was really fast and convoluted.
To get your classes a little bit easier.
What's that?
That also helps you be able to you can move up in like the ranking for being able to enroll in your classes. So our kids that are concurrently enrolled are the bottom rank for being able to get their classes.
Yeah, and that's it's a fairly common and popular thing to do for academically ready kids, is just be done with high school and start doing community college. It's a great option for some kids.
Right.
And then they go on to Cal Berkeley or wherever, they could go on to these great schools as a transfer student. And I just think of all these poor kids in normal high school just working so hard to get into a good college. And I've watched kids like from 13 to 23, they attend community college.
Right.
And get their AA and then transfer over to Berkeley or wherever.
So look up your community college on the internet, look under dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment to find out your individual college's requirements for doing it, and also how many credits or units students are allowed to take simultaneously, what classes might be excluded. It's different for every community college. It is not consistent. So go ahead, that's something that you need to look up for yourself.
And also on Thursday, we had an information session with Golden West College, and Tim, the president of that college, spoke for over an hour about the California community college system and concurrent enrollment, dual enrollment, all these things. And that was also Facebook Live and is recorded and can be found on the Golden West College page. And it wasn't specific. A lot of it was specific to Golden West, but he just has a lot of insight. He's worked at a lot of different colleges over the years. And so that would also be a helpful thing to watch about this topic, I think. And it's found on the videos on Golden West College. And I can put it on the resource sheet. Heather, would you just write that down for me? Because I'm a mess.
I'm seeing Lissa's question too about what if a child's in middle school and ready for college classes. I believe that they can also do concurrent enrollment for some of the community colleges.
It's dependent on the community college. My personal children did that. Yeah. And at our community college, it required some standardized testing of some kind. It didn't have to come from a school that indicated that they were academically ready, and an interview with the dean and work samples. And that was it. And then you could attend. Each one will be different. I'm pretty sure there is a way for a child of any age to attend your local community college. They will have their own set of steps to do that.
They could even join. I had a 14-year-old this year. I worked with her for about a year. She was taking dual enrollment community college classes. She was getting straight A's in them. And I basically said, why don't we just graduate you and let you just attend community college full-fledged? It's just, she was ready.
Right.
So she, as a 14-year-old, graduated from Pacific State. Actually, I have an accredited program I work with called West River Academy. She graduated from West River Academy, and now she'll just be a full-on community college student starting at 15. But I know it can happen even younger.
Yes. So I think that what Tim said is that it's typically not encouraged and that you would need to talk to the school. So if your child is not in high school yet and you want them to be able to take college classes, he said, just call him. He actually gave his email address right in the discussion to reach out to him. So you would do the same for whatever community college is near you. You would reach out to the college and say, my child is ready for this. And you would have a discussion with them. Liz, you actually are friends with a family who is part of our community, and their son is quite young, and he just graduated from Fullerton College. I think he has like 4 associate's degrees, or he's amazing. So it's doable. It just takes that discussion with.
Be aware that any student of any age enrolled in a community college will be treated as an adult, and you will not receive communication of any kind as the parent, and they will not entertain communication from you. So my kids started at 10 and 11 at community college, and we had to train them to speak to the adults, which served them well in later life. But as a parent, you have to be aware that you have no resources personally.
And that was something that Tim pointed out. You as the parent want to make sure they're ready for that, because once they're taking a community college class, that credit and their grade and whatever it is they do in that class is a permanent record on their college transcripts.
Good point, yeah. All right, well, the last question that we have is, what about AB 2990?
So AB 2990 is not a law yet. It is still on the assembly side of our beautiful California Capitol. They are trying to pass it through. What it basically does, well, what the intention behind it is legislators are not happy with our ability as parents in partnering with our charter schools to help direct educational funds for vendor classes and those types of things. So we as a community have been fighting this bill since, I don't know, for months now. If you're on Facebook, we do have a page dedicated to keeping families informed. It's Assembly Bill 2990, Take Action, and I can put that in the resources as well. So I'm encouraging everyone, if you're just thinking about joining this community and homeschooling your children through a charter school, or being able to take part in any kind of hybrid or non-classroom based charter school, it's important that you call your legislator and let them know that you oppose 2990 and ask them to please vote no on it. We are expecting it to be on the assembly floor possibly on Monday. So please leave messages this weekend so they get it on Monday, or call on Monday, or you can send emails. There's a lot of posts on that AB 2990 page about it. And of course, again, I'm happy to personally help anyone. This past week, I had lots of families calling me, asking me what they can say, asking me how to find their legislator, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm happy to personally help you compose that and get yourself ready to make that phone call. It's actually much less scary after you do it the first time. Go ahead.
Repeat exactly what 299 is, like the synopsis of what they're trying to pass?
I don't have it written down in front of me. When it's legal terms, it's a lot of different things. The main points are that it now has been like revised, and it only is coming after or applying to non-classroom based charter schools. And there's language at the very top of the bill that says something about financial incentives, which in discussions with the legislators and during their committee hearings, what they're talking about is our ability to help direct funds to vendors, which is how we educate our children. We use our vendors and our schools to create custom educational programs for our students. So we don't want this bill to pass with such broad language, or at all, because they don't seem to be wanting. The more they amend it, the more it becomes specific to us, which I already knew the target was us. So does that make sense? And I can pull up the whole spreadsheet of information that I have and share it with you guys. But the part that worries me the most is their attack upon our ability as parents to help direct our students' education with the funding that we share with our schools. But again, it's not money that we get. Does that make sense? So you don't actually ever have access to real cash money. Your charter school system has an ordering system within it where you request what you want to, like the vendor that you want. Say you want to buy Right Start Math from Rainbow Resource. Your teacher is like, oh yeah, let's use Right Start Math. You go into the system and you place an order for Right Start Math. Your teacher then verifies that the one that you've linked to is the one that you guys discussed. It's the right age level and everything like that. And then she approves it. And then it goes to the vendor ordering team that then orders it. And then the curriculum comes to you for use. then you give that curriculum back. So you're working with your teacher to decide which things you want for your student, and then your school's ordering it. You're not the one making the purchase. You're not the one paying. You're not the one getting the money. So you're just teaming with that teacher. So that's what we're trying to make clear, because I think legislators were thinking that the schools are just handing you a debit card or giving you money and you're going out and buying what you want. And that's not what's happening at any of the schools.
And I will say, I was kind of intimidated to write a letter to the representative, but I was like, okay, I was a homeschooler and I'm a vendor, so if anybody should do this, I should definitely do this. And so I just used the template, the letter template that Wendy gave, and I just filled in my name. And then I was like, you know what? And then I realized, oh, it only took me like 2 minutes. I was like, okay, I still have like a couple more minutes left. And so I wrote like a sentence in the beginning just to personalize it, but it really took less than 5 minutes. So it's not as scary as you would think. You just like put in your email address, put in your name, your address, and then boom, it's done. So.
And Liz is offering that if anyone needs help in Spanish, she's been helping me. She's been wonderful. So she posted her email address in the chat, and I can put that, if that's okay with you, Liz, in the resources that we send out to families. I'm sure you're going to be fine with it, but we can touch base after.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm going to head out.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Wendy. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you, Mariah, for coming. Have a great rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Bye, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy. Bye.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks,
Bye.
Donna.
All right. Well, this was so fun. Thanks for hosting this. I will see you later.
Thanks for coming, and we'll figure out our next topics and all of that.
Sounds great. All right. Bye.
Good weekend.
You too.
Bye. All right. I think everyone's gone. Bye. Thanks for coming.